welcome. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes, you can hear me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports here for another Formula 1 daily news video. Actually, today I've changed the title of the video to a motorsport news video because we actually have some more news, not just about Formula 1, but also about some MotoGP a little bit later in the video, of course. But to start with the title of our video, about Lewis Hamilton with his backlash as Formula 1 star told he is in the wrong. David Coulthard believes Lewis Hamilton got it wrong with his recent comments on Max Verstappen. The Mercedes star suggested his Red Bull rival had it easier during his time in the sport due to the quality of his teammates. But Coulthard has now condemned Hamilton and believes he's in the wrong for two reasons. In an interview with Formula1.com, the 52-year-old said, I know Lewis had made a comment that he does not have tough teammates, speaking about Max Verstappen, of course. First of all, that's not the case, and second of all, it's not actually about your teammate. It is about who your competitors are, and the biggest competitor so far has been Lewis. And they have been unbelievable in the way they have gone wheel to wheel and performed and really delivered some great results. Hamilton upset Red Bull fans by saying his own teammates were far superior to Verstappen's, citing the likes of Nico Rosberg and Jenson Button as examples. When I qualified half a second, 6/10 ahead of Valtteri Bottas, they didn't say the same things as they said today with Max qualifying 6/10 ahead of Sergio Perez, Hamilton said. It's blown up much more. In my personal opinion, Valtteri and all of my teammates have been stronger than the teammates Max Verstappen has had. Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, and Nico Rosberg, I've had so many, said Hamilton. These guys have been very strong, very strong, very consistent, and Max has not raced against anyone like this. Hamilton's comments also sparked a response from Verstappen himself, and maybe the 25-year-old hit back by accusing the Mercedes star of being jealous. Maybe he's a little bit jealous of our current success, he said before the Italian Grand Prix earlier this month. I don't know why he said that. Maybe he thinks there's something to win or defend with comments like that, but for me, it doesn't matter at all. Meanwhile, Hamilton has faced calls to be stripped of the Formula 1 title he won back in 2008. Felipe Massa is actively looking to get the result of that season overturned, with the Brazilian's lawyers taking action at the moment. Hamilton, however, didn't appear fazed when quizzed last week, saying, if that's the direction Felipe wants to go in, that's his decision, but I prefer not to focus on the past, he stated. Very interesting to see the differences between Felipe Massa and Lewis Hamilton, who of course, has now the opportunity to take back that 2021 World Championship if Felipe Massa does win his championship. Now, it will be very interesting to see the outcome of that lawsuit and whether Hamilton will go ahead and take action then over the 2021 World Championship. I doubt it, but we'll have to wait and see what they decide to go and do. But also very interesting to see what David Coulthard has said in response to Lewis Hamilton's calls of Verstappen's teammates not being as strong as his in the past. Yeah, interesting to see, but nonetheless, we'll carry on with this news article, carrying on from another one, going on about Lance Stroll declaring himself fit for the Japanese Grand Prix after his Singapore crash. The Aston Martin driver did not start the Marina Bay race after a heavy incident in qualifying. Lance Stroll has now declared himself fit though for the Japanese Grand Prix after suggestions he would miss the Suzuka race following his Singapore accident. Stroll sat out at the race in Marina Bay after crashing heavily at the final corner in qualifying, destroying his Aston Martin 23 race car. In what was a mutual decision with the team, Stroll, who was feeling very sore following the high G impact post the first did not start of his Formula 1 career, or posted the first did not start of his Formula 1 career. The Canadian passed all of the FIA's concussion checks at the time, but there were doubts on social media leading up to the Suzuka weekend that Stroll would not take part, but he has posted on Twitter that he is ready to race in what will be his 5th Japanese Grand Prix. Team boss Mike Crack has said, and was also adamant, that Stroll would be fine to race and that he had no concerns about him. Lance is very strong. He's much stronger than you think, Crack told media. You've seen him in the TV pen after the accident, so I'm not concerned that he will be there in Suzuka. He'll be in the car and he'll be very fast, he concluded. Glad to see that Lance Stroll is fine after that accident, and we'll have to wait and see what he is able to do in Suzuka come the next time out. Moving on to the next article, why the new flexi floor suspensions have kicked off in Formula 1. The introduction of a new flexi wing technical directive at the Singapore Grand Prix was always going to trigger interest if there was any shuffling of Formula 1's pecking order. So it was a little wonder that Red Bull's team boss Christian Horner, whose team had been dominant in Formula 1 in this season up until now, have found themselves having to reportedly dismiss any suggestions that his squad's struggles were related to the new FIA stipulations over flexi wings. Backing up his argument in that fact, with a flexi wing estimated to be only worth up to about 1/10 of a second around Singapore, the scale of Red Bull's pace drop pointed to other factors being at play, as the RB19 proved itself difficult to get into the right setup window around the Marina Bay circuit. Plus, according to the consensus in the paddock, the focus of the FIA push on flexi wings was not in fact Red Bull, as it was others who had been perhaps pushing the boundaries in this area far more. While it was easy to link a potential shuffling in the order in Singapore, some teams looked better than normal. Others had drifted back with the timing of the much talked about FlexiWing technical directive. It was actually another FIA document that had gone under the radar in recent weeks, which served to fuel bigger intrigue for engineers. Plank games. At the same time, the FIA introduced its technical directive on flexi wings in late August, Motorsport.com had learned that it had also sent out a revision to the famous Technical Directive 39 that was introduced at the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix, which had originally been aimed at bringing an end to porpoising. One of the factors to trigger car porpoising was suspected to be teams playing around with flexible floors, which is why from last year fresh stipulations came in about the stiffness of floors and the measurements of planks. The wildest theories at the time pointed to teams running removable skid block designs that disappeared into the plank area, so did not get worn when the car ran close to the ground, and therefore did not wear down beyond the allowed tolerances. This was possible to do because, at the time, only a small section of the skid block was measured to check on compliance post-race. However, to stamp out the practice, the FIA declared that measurements would be taken around 75% of the skid block radius, effectively preventing small areas getting protected. So, very interesting to see that these little technical directives have now, focused in on these little loopholes that teams have been able to rein in on. As we see Orville Clisby, one of our new regulars in the channel, saying competition would have been tough during his karting years. Certainly, I mean, he had a lot of younger drivers. He had Lando Norris. I think he also had, I'm trying to think, Charles Leclerc as well. He also had Esteban Ocon when he was in his karting days. So he had a lot of competition when he was younger, did Max Verstappen. And then there is his esports endeavors, says Orville. Yes, certainly he is continuing in his esports as well. A lot of different formats where Max Verstappen is focusing on, not only on Formula 1, but also on other areas. Continuing though with this article, it says here, the matter seems to have gone away, but during 2023 it has emerged that the teams have still been playing around in this area and continue to push the limits with floor flexibility. It is such a key performance differentiator. The focus of this latest push appears to suggest that the teams have shifted their focus away from the skid block moving to it now being the plank, that it is the movable component, as teams exploit a tolerance within the rules that allows the plank to slightly deflect. One of the new articles in the technical regulations state that bodywork within the RV plank may deflect no more than 2 mm at the two holes in the plank at a certain measurement, and no more than 2 mm at the rearmost hole when the car without the driver is supported at these positions, for testing of course. It is suggested that this 2 mm tolerance has been viewed not as a limitation by some teams, but as an opportunity to get away with some extra flexibility to help with performance gains. One theory that emerged in Singapore was that this could help allow the plank and the floor to get sucked down at high speed, thanks to this flexibility delivering a nice downforce boost, while the skid block remained static and out of the way, so were at no risk of being worn. The skid blocks were in effect disappearing, just like they were in 2022. But while back then they were being moved, this time it was the plank around it that was flexible. So a lot of information here, and this article goes on forever, but it just shows how these teams keep iterating and designing to get around these technical directives and try and find any little loophole in the rules. And certainly that is why these new technical directives have been introduced in Singapore, to stop these teams from just trying to get any little advantage over other teams out there. But it has been seen now that they are looking to close these loopholes. Maybe we will see some teams just getting a little bit closer than others, as now an F1 era expert reveals whether the Red Bull nightmare will continue in Suzuka. Having undeniably established their dominance in the initial 15 races of 2023 in an unprecedented manner, Red Bull experienced one of the most lackluster weekends in terms of pace in nearly 3 years in Singapore, and it's fair to ponder will the same issues blight them at this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix. Interestingly, during this past weekend, the FIA introduced a technical directive with the intention of curbing flexible wings. Did these flexible wings really affect Red Bull? In case you're not familiar with the term, flexible wings refer to the wings that undergo deformation under specific loads, with the primary load being downforce. The inherent advantage of such wings lies in their ability to deform at high speeds, reducing the frontal area exposed to aerodynamic drag, consequently providing an advantage in straight line speed. To assess whether Red Bull's end of straight performance has been affected, let's examine some metrics and graphics compared to Hungary. We can look in these graphics that the straight line speed hasn't necessarily been from this comparison, it can be reasonably inferred that the presence of flexible wings has indeed had an impact on Red Bull's performance. However, looking at quotes from Perez and Verstappen, the issue seems to be deeper. It hasn't been a great weekend for us so far. Qualifying was hectic, said the Dutchman to the media. I couldn't brake late and hard because I would bottom out. I've also been struggling with low-speed corners. We've just had no rear support. Perez could only agree with his teammate. We've made a lot of changes to the car this weekend, but nothing really worked. We need to understand it, said the Mexican to the media. It's been tough because we've been making a few changes here and there, but nothing seems to transform the balance. It's been tricky out there with the amount of sliding we've been having, and the balance is changing corner to corner. The thing we're struggling the most with, though, is the ride, and it's made it difficult here, and made the ride even worse, the changes that we've introduced. Since the flexible wings have been dealt with primarily straight line performance, it couldn't have made this drastic of an effect on car balance and cornering performance for the Red Bull cars. They did also notably bring new floors to this race weekend and did change them right before qualifying because they didn't necessarily like the way that the cars were handling with these new floors. So they didn't necessarily get the performance correct and the setup correct with these new floors for qualifying, which is possibly why they really did struggle in their qualifying trim and their qualifying setup. So very interesting to see why these Red Bulls have been struggling. And Joseph saying Max was a little bit more raw and had to refine his skills, so he had a lot more crashes in his early career. I certainly agree with you on that. He did take a little bit of time to get up to speed to certainly where he is now with his consistency and his just absolute speed that he does have. I agree that he did have to refine himself and his driving style, and now that he is a force to reckon with when he does have the car underneath him. Of course, you can say that it is down to the car that he is so strong nowadays, but I think it's hand in hand with driver and car just working perfectly together. And unfortunately in Singapore, we just saw that Max Verstappen didn't have the right car underneath him, and he did struggle quite a bit. Moving on though to the next article, the signs that suggest an immediate Red Bull resurgence in Formula One's Japanese Grand Prix. So one article says that they may struggle, another one saying that they may be strong yet again. Yeah, they want me to subscribe for that though, so we won't carry on for that. But we'll just read a little bit about it. They will, as Red Bull's RB19's dominance has gone for this 2023 season, it will not go down unique in Formula One's history as the first car to be taken to every single campaign to race win. Carlos Sainz's victory in the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix was utterly brilliant. He and Ferrari nailed every important call and stressful moment, backed up beautifully by Charles Leclerc, who went on to back up his teammate Carlos Sainz and acted as a rear gunner in that strategy, just holding off the two Mercs in the later stages of the race. And then, of course, he did get overtaken when they were on those new tyres. But yeah, very, very interesting to see that Red Bull might be a bit stronger if they do bounce back from Singapore. I mean, I think that once they do get that strategy correct and have the right setup for that race, they may just be able to bounce back properly. Hopefully we do see them bouncing back and we have a lot more competition. Another article now saying bad news for Logan Sargeant after reports emerge of Williams Formula One negotiations for weeks. Negotiating for weeks with Aston Martin reserve driver Felipe Dragovich for a 2024 drive. There are several reports suggesting that Aston Martin reserve driver Felipe Dragovich could be a possible replacement for Logan Sargeant at Williams. This could be alarming news for the American rookie, as he now has limited time to prove his worth and keep his seat in Formula One. Even though team principal James Vowles has praised Sargeant and wants to support the rookie, it is clear that the driver needs to step up his performance if he wants to stay in the sport. Even though his teammate Alex Albon is a much more experienced driver than him, Sargeant's pace has been nowhere near that of the Thai drivers. As the 2023 F1 season gradually comes to a close, the driver market is heating up, with the new drivers hungrily awaiting for an F1 seat, for those who are not performing or up to par. According to Blick, one of those drivers is Aston Martin's reserve driver Felipe Dragovich. The Brazilian-Italian driver has an impressive record of racing in single-seater racing series. He has won in Formula 2000 Euroformula, Spanish Formula 3 and Formula 2. Although Formula 1 Haas driver Mick Schumacher was also a prime candidate for a return with Williams, the doors of an opportunity have nearly closed on him, and has reportedly been contacted by Alpine's World Endurance Championship team. Hence, Dragovich is the next candidate for the British team. Only time will tell whether Logan Sargeant will be able to prove his worth and keep his seat, or if Williams will start to look at the driver market for a new race driver. Williams' team principal wants to support Logan Sargeant instead of punishing him. Despite many rumours and reports of Logan Sargeant's seat being in danger, Williams' team principal James Vowles is willing to support the American rookie. Vowles has stated that Logan Sargeant is well aware of his learning curve and how he needs to make it steeper. Furthermore, he explained how Williams should help him along in his career path rather than punish him for his poor performances. The pace of learning has to increase now. He's well aware of that, and I think he's already very mature for his age. He knows he has a long career ahead of him, and he's in charge of that. Our job is to help him along the way, not punish him, James Vowles told the media. This clearly shows that Williams' team principal still has his arms around Logan Sargeant, and it's also very much solidifying that the rookie will most likely stay with the British team until 2024. Well, if he doesn't, and if he continues to crash like he did in Singapore, I think then maybe the team will start to look at other competitors to fill that seat in 2024, and a keen candidate for that seat will certainly be Felipe Dragovich, as well as Mick Schumacher, who I'd love to certainly see in that seat for 2024 and onwards. I think Mick needs to be given another opportunity in a race seat in Formula 1, but it's difficult at the moment with so many people being available for a race seat at the moment, as AlphaTauri set to announce drivers as Williams are told to approach Lawson in another Formula 1 news roundup. It's been another busy day of Formula 1 news as fallout continues from the Singapore Grand Prix and attention begins to turn to Japan this weekend. AlphaTauri are in the headlines for reportedly deciding upon their 2024 lineup, though that has yet to be confirmed, and pungent pundit opinions from the weekend still hangs in the air from a frantic Singapore Grand Prix. Let's dive into what AlphaTauri reportedly are set to do. AlphaTauri are reportedly set to retain Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. A report from German outlet Automotor and Sport claims that Yuki Tsunoda has agreed to stay on at AlphaTauri for the 2024 season, and he could have his new deal announced at his home race in Suzuka this weekend. Tsunoda stood out alongside Nick de Vries earlier this season, while he has been significantly more challenged alongside Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson in more recent races. Also claimed, AlphaTauri are set to hold on to Ricciardo for next season, while the Australian still sits on the sidelines for now as he recovers from a broken hand. Planet F1 has approached AlphaTauri for comments, but has not yet received a response from them. Brundle has also said, though, that AlphaTauri are a no-show. Well, AlphaTauri's no-show was a sporting disappointment when they didn't show to their FIA stewards after the impeding incident between Yuki Tsunoda and Max Verstappen. While Max Verstappen was handed a reprimand for impeding Tsunoda at the Singapore Grand Prix, no AlphaTauri representative was required to be at the FIA hearing over the matter. Despite this lack of requirement from the governing body, this was led to questions about the two Red Bull outfits working alongside each other to potentially protect the World Championship's leaders' interests. Quite how Max Verstappen didn't also get a penalty for impeding Yuki Tsunoda in qualifying when considering other penalties applied this season was a great surprise to many in the paddock, which I confidently predict includes the team and driver in question, Brundle wrote in his Sky Sports column. That Tsunoda's AlphaTauri team didn't send a representative to the hearing, albeit as the junior Red Bull team, was a sporting disappointment to me. Very interesting to hear that from Martin Brundle, and Williams have now been told as well to swoop in for Liam Lawson if he doesn't get picked up by AlphaTauri for a race seat. Former Formula 1 driver Karun Chandok believes current AlphaTauri substitute Liam Lawson is making a fine impression in Formula 1, and Williams should be considering him for a 2024 seat. Only the AlphaTauri seats and one Williams drive remain uncontracted for next year. And if Lawson is one to miss out in the Red Bull Junior musical chairs, former Lotus and HRT driver Chandok thinks his best performances have been more than worthy for a drive at Williams next year, based on what he has done in such a short space of time. You've got to have the conversation, haven't you? Chandok said on Sky Sports, because Albon's outqualified Sargent on every occasion. He has scored all the points so far for Williams. If you are Williams, you should be swapping around, and Liam Lawson has put himself on the market in a very good way. I certainly believe that Liam Lawson should be on the driver market for any other team that has a seat available for the next season, or even in the next 2 seasons in the future, because I think Liam Lawson is certainly a hot commodity for the future in Formula 1. We'll have to wait and see what does happen in the future, but very interesting to see what is happening at the moment. Moving on to another article here, Formula 1 fans slam Sergio Perez as he had made a horrible move on Yuki Tsunoda in the race. Sergio Perez has come under fire from fans for his collision with Yuki Tsunoda, which ended his race in Singapore. Formula 1 fans have been hitting out at Red Bull driver Sergio Perez for crashing into Yuki Tsunoda after the race start of the Singapore Grand Prix. The damage sustained from the collision caused the Japanese driver to retire from the race on the second lap. Tsunoda reported to the AlphaTauri team that he had suffered from a puncture before he stopped the car off the track. Luckily for the rest of the grid, he was not able to get the car behind the race. Well, luckily for the rest of the grid, he was able to get the car behind the race barrier, so a safety car or red flag was not needed. However, he was shocked. However, what has shocked fans is that Perez was not investigated by the stewards for the move. Onboard footage has been released to social medias, and fans have been taking the opportunity to hit out at the Mexican driver for the disgusting move. Perez taking Yuki out of the race, but no investigation or event or event it being shown on Sky F1 coverage, Red Bull running the FIA and the media, said one fan on social media there. Certainly a lot of fans getting quite upset for the fact that Sergio Perez was not investigated for his horrific move on Yuki Tsunoda there in the race. Hopefully, we do get more of those moves being investigated after the race, as that is just horrific. We don't want to see drivers being taken out in the first lap like that from drivers like Sergio Perez. And I mean, we've seen cleaner racing from Sergio in the past. We don't expect him to race like this, and hopefully we don't see it again. As I do see, we have a whole bunch of people commenting. We have Mark there in the comments, Joseph, and Orville, of course. Thank you very much for all of you for watching. Please do be sure to comment there in the comment section if you haven't yet, and do be sure to vote in our poll asking if you think Max has had tough competition throughout his racing career. Currently 75% of you think he has had tough competition throughout his career. Moving on to our next article, and the reason why it's motorsport news here today, not Formula 1 news. MotoGP's first Indian Grand Prix has been hit by visa chaos, as some teams and MotoGP's first Indian Grand Prix has been hit by visa chaos, as some teams and riders are unable to fly. Many MotoGP paddock personnel and riders, including Marc Marquez, are currently grounded, having been unable to board flights bound for India due to ongoing visa issues. This weekend is supposed to mark the inaugural MotoGP round in India at the former Formula 1 venue in Budd International Circuit. The event has already faced numerous bouts of uncertainty, as requested track works were only recently finished, and the homologation process has yet to be finalised. Aprilia's Alex Espargaro told Motorsport.com recently that riders are standing united on the subject of track safety and are due to inspect it themselves on Thursday before voting on whether or not to race. Most of the paddock was meant to fly to India on Tuesday, but many have been turned away from flights having not received the necessary visa. The factory Honda squad and both of its riders, including 8-time world champion Marquez, are among the list. Marquez posted on social media saying, "Flight delayed due to a lack of visa for India, so we're going to pedal for a little while," referring to a picture of himself on his mountain bike. He now hopes to be able to board a flight to India on Wednesday, assuming his visa arrives. Some teams, such as Ducati and Aprilia, have been able to travel, while several others have not. Although confusion has taken over the scene, those affected point the finger at various agencies in charge of making the relevant arrangements, both European and Indian. Honda has been forced to cancel a factory visit with its riders in India scheduled for Wednesday, while numerous members of the media and photographers have missed flights due to their not getting visas on time. The International Road Race Teams Association has promised to reimburse outfits who have had to pay for their own flights to be changed. At this stage, it is hoped that everyone will be able to land in Delhi by Thursday, at the absolute latest, to allow the event to run as scheduled. However, the proposal to curtail Friday's running, either partially or fully, is on the table depending on how the visa situation unfolds. This was a measure put in place last year at the Argentinian Grand Prix, when technical measures and issues with cargo planes meant that freight arrived to Termas de Rio Hondo late. Friday's running was cancelled as a result of this. An update from the Indian GP organisation is expected soon. Interesting to see what is happening there in the MotoGP, but ahead of this Indian Grand Prix. Hopefully all of the teams and the riders will be able to make it to the circuit before Thursday, so that running can go ahead as entailed. We'll follow on with that, but moving on to our final two little bits of information before we sign off here. Mercedes have brought new front wings to this new Japanese Grand Prix, or to the Japanese Grand Prix ahead of this weekend. Just some pictures have been released, not any articles, but some pictures have been released from some spy photographers with some new updated front wings from Mercedes. Maybe this is due to those technical regulations being brought in, and they are just making sure that they're safe in terms of that. And then the last one, just talking a little bit about the fact that it is bucketing it down with rain in Suzuka today. So we might get some rain there this race weekend. We'll have to wait and see what does happen. But at the moment, it is certainly pouring it down in Suzuka. We'll have to wait to see what does happen throughout the rest of this race weekend, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a very exciting one, very early for us here in South Africa, but we certainly hope that all of you will join us in the stream. I've been Reece here though on Forever Motorsports. Thank you very much for joining me for my daily Formula 1 news video. I'm sure that all of you have enjoyed it. Please do be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have, and I will be sure to join you tomorrow for another daily news video.